it's more like the lights. I don't know. I was really struggling because I'm like, by the time we,
And it's just, that's okay.
and I think like the projector bulb is not great and,
That's exciting.
all right.
Better.
We're doing a really good job.
Having a moment. Okay.
I didn't put them on
Um,
voice down, but
I don't know if,
Oh,
that
okay.
short, but
I think it doesn't care who's calling it.
you know what, I'm gonna just look.
well,
at
no,
it.
Karen's gonna be on Zoom
Oh, someone's on the
on a phone, so I don't know who they are. And I don't know how to like let the, like, I don't know how they raise their hand if they want to.
Mm,
I don't know how to deal with this.
So we should just.
there's
send
not a
that
chat
somebody
function.
Smart.
or
Not if they're on.
webinar.
I mean,
Animal. Yes, so, and we were talking.
maybe person on the phone,
Watch out.
if you would like to
good.
introduce yourself so we know who's joining us.
Take yourself off mute.
That might be right.
Is it Randy?
Yeah, is it DC phone number?
No, it is a 202.
I can check.
It's me on Zoom. That's what she.
Yeah, right, it is. Okay. Thanks, Randy.
I'll call it.
I will,
My guess is she, yeah.
all right, I'm gonna see if I can, I guess I can't promote you to a panelist when you're on your phone.
Oh, she said she's on her way.
Okay, perfect. I appreciate the
Texting.
Randy by way of Kathleen communication.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
What's today's date?
25th.
81.
Happy birthday. Yeah.
All right, we ready to call to order?
I think so.
Take it away.
Welcome, everybody. Everybody did introductions before we started, right? But, Randy, so when you come in, you'll meet Carrick, who is our newest member. And, great, so I will start us off with a land acknowledgement. Let us begin by bringing our minds and hearts together to focus on our mission of responsible stewardship of Scarborough's lands and waters for generations to come. For generations before us, many people have protected these places we love. The places where we live and work are the original homelands of the Wabanaki people, including the Owaskawag people who once lived here in what we now know as Scarborough. I honor the care and respect with which they have stewarded these lands and waters. The land and waters are unceded territory, and the struggle for Wabanaki sovereignty continues to this day. Our work to protect the lands and waters reflects our commitment to wise and responsible stewardship for all of future generations. Let us begin by holding this responsibility strongly in our minds, even as we face criticism and opposition. Does anyone have any discussion or comments on the minutes? Do I have a motion to
I will motion to.
approve the minutes? Great. Do we have a second? Second. Great. All in favor of approving the minutes?
And I'm thrilled that we can forego roll call. So
Great.
fantastic. Thank you, everyone. Unanimous.
And Kathy's here. Hi, Kathy.
Hi, Cassie.
Just voted on the minutes. You didn't
Okay,
make any-
okay.
Unless you wanted to totally lambaste them.
No,
Yeah.
the minutes are perfectly fine.
You have any comments?
I vote.
Okay, great.
We can squish you in, you know, we're here.
It's all right.
Yeah, the technology.
So, we have. Does anybody have any additions to the agenda that we don't know about? I know we have, Karen is gonna be we can do something that we all should have received in our email. But aside from that, does anybody have any new items for the agenda? Great. So. Public? Andrew, would you like to make any public comment?
Well, very quickly, this Saturday, 10 organizations have gotten together to put on the World Trail Film Festival. It's at Hannaford Hall in Portland. There's still tickets available. I just checked this morning. So if you're interested, you can go on pretty much any land trust in the greater Portland area and find information, including Portland Trails.
Nothing that you guys found.
Yes.
Or we don't have anything else on there.
No.
Okay. All right, well, thank you. And I guess we'll move on to LID ordinance.
We sure can. All right, let me just adjust the screens here so that everyone, see if it lets me move it, which Zoom has, there we go. Zoom's been a little finicky this evening. All right, so let me just share my screen so I can see. All right. So we. So everyone should have received this. There's a version of this table in the agenda packet, but also I sent a link to this so that you all can input comments and questions. And so I can give a little bit of background and we can start working through this. So the column that's labeled DEP minimum standard, that's basically a summary of the requirements that DEP is mandating that the town pass in the form of an ordinance.
So those are new standards, not the current standards.
Right, I mean, some of these, as you can see, like Scarborough's already doing some of these, and then we're also doing some, but maybe not to the extent that DEP would like to see in terms of a low impact development ordinance. So I put what DEP is requiring, and then we had talked last time when we were walking through kind of what LID is, some ideas for ways that we may go beyond DEP's minimum to set a higher standard in Scarborough. So the question, who's the source of these proposals? This is basically based on what staff has discussed, what we've heard, you know, this group and others kind of
Okay.
talk about.
Okay, so I just wasn't sure if there was some other, local, kind of GP type, group that got together, or if it was just staff. and-
Yeah. So at this point, it's informal,
Okay.
and the way that requirements work through the town stormwater or permit is that DEP tells us what the minimum is that we need to do, but we can always do more.
Okay.
And so typically when we're writing our plans and things like that we're required to through our permits, we do say we're gonna do the minimum, but we
Okay.
typically demonstrate that we've gone above and beyond. In the case of an ordinance, that's a little bit different, because if we set the minimum, developers are gonna meet the minimum. So we want to be able, or we at least want to have the discussion around setting a higher standard in Scarborough. So I don't know how we want to work through these. I think some of the questions, Cressy, that you entered, we can address fairly easily.
Okay.
So
That's fine.
and I'm not entirely sure what you mean by dispense with site just mean that all sites have to comply? Is
Right,
that
because
what
you're
you-
just saying, above 5,000, they have to comply, but below, do their best, but you're gonna do a site review anyways, right? So you would have to come up with a plan either way, so does that size marker make any difference? I mean,
So that might be my fault, making that a little muddier is, when we were talking about setting a threshold. I think it's good to set a threshold because 1 acre is pretty high.
yeah,
Yeah, just point of order, it's like 43,500 something.
Yeah.
And it's big.
Yeah, and that's
So-
so like disturbed soil.
Yeah.
Right,
And so currently our ordinance is vague and I use that to my advantage. And so Autumn and I kind of work together when we talk with, developers coming in and saying, okay, what can, okay, we know you're not required to get a state stormwater permit or a site law permit through DEP.
right,
But locally, we can kind of look at, there's vague enough language in there that says you will do water quality or treatment, or you'll do water quantity, like
Right.
holding back for flooding and things like that. And because it's vague, even if it's 500 square feet, I usually say, well, it's all going to this low corner. What if you put a rain garden there, or you did something there, right? And
Right.
not like asking for the world, but
Right.
there's opportunities. And so that's where I get back to that greatest extent practical. I feel like captures that kind of stuff that right now I ask for. And quite frankly, they can tell me, no, we're not gonna do it. But I feel like Autumn and I have a good kind of partnership in trying to work through it and saying, okay, we're not asking for the moon here. This is, I think, in a realistic, we try to ask for things that are realistic in
Right.
kind of the scope of what they're doing.
correct.
And I hate to lose that and just
Okay.
say, oh, that was 4,999 square feet and I don't get anything.
Right,
Whereas in the past, I'd have them actually doing things, right? So
Right.
that was me kind of trying to fit that in.
yeah, I get it. Now, but my point is, do you really need that? Wouldn't you have that discussion anyway?
But I
Whether
would,
it's
it would be
500
to
or-
the standard of
yeah.
DEP. Right
Okay.
now, we're saying DEP has like, so their stormwater standard,
Right,
we would be doing, they'd have to meet even at 5,000 square feet.
right,
Which is not a lot when you're talking about,
yeah,
a-
43,000.
a site plan.
Right,
So,
Yeah.
and to give a little bit more context, so. Initially, we were thinking, 10,000 square feet, and Angela had the experience, when she worked in Saco, that was their threshold, and she was like. We get an awful lot of developments coming through that are 900.
yeah.
99 or
Yeah,
9,999 square
I'm
feet.
put on
Yeah.
that, right.
Right, just so they can not have to, like, if they are under that threshold, they don't have to comply.
Got it.
So, chances are any
Any
sites that are gonna
yeah.
come through are gonna be 5,000 square feet of disturbance.
Right.
That's, fixing a parking lot, type things.
So this pretty much catches everything.
It should pretty much,
Yeah.
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 and then if we do get the random one-offs, and then with a smaller site, smaller disturbance, they may not have the space to address all of these requirements, so we'll have the ability to address them as it makes sense
Okay.
for that site.
But I like the must comply to the greatest extent practical, because it's like. Then at least you have something.
Right.
In the ordinance that says we
Right.
have a mechanism in place.
Yeah.
That makes this. What we do with every site.
Forces the conversation.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yes, that was a much more eloquent way of saying it.
Inventory all the sensitive areas, so Cressy, your question there is or comment is to provide the list. DEP provides the list, I just didn't
Okay.
include it in
Okay,
the.
so it's already there.
Yeah, they provide kind of the minimum items that we need to be looking at, and it is pretty comprehensive. Require limits of disturbance, we're already doing that, so we'll follow the standard for that one. Maintain a minimum 25-foot vegetated buffer on all protected natural resources, including intermittent streams. So this is higher than our wetland threshold, because the full 25 feet needs to be a buffer, not just 15 of the 25 feet. So that's already kind of better than what we have in place for our wetlands, but we're saying let's look at 50, and I honestly, I don't think we would get 100. So,
Yes, I know, after that.
after the experience.
Tried to do the dance last
Yeah.
time. Didn't work.
So, and 50 feet is greater than, twice as good as a 25-foot buffer, because the
Yeah.
wider the buffer width, the benefits improve exponentially, so.
And that would be for everything or for just, area, that 50-foot would apply to all, as to all new LED sites where you have the LID.
It, to, protecting natural resources, essentially waterways.
Waterways.
So really our shoreland zoning, if the shoreland zoning has the higher standard, that would take the precedent. That's the way all of our ordinances are written, but shoreland zoning doesn't isn't triggered for all of
Okay.
the sites that we're looking at, or it doesn't apply to all the water resources in Scarborough, so this would be a way for us to get additional protection around any waterways that aren't triggered shoreline zoning.
Okay.
So any other thoughts on minimized site clearing? This is also the one, I think, where we want to try to fit in tree preservation and need to figure out how we can fit tree preservation into this, especially in our kind of commercial development and subdivisions. Autumn, do you have thoughts? I saw
Oh,
you-
no, just that I was gonna say this is the spot where you would want, we don't want to allow clear cutting of sites.
Yeah, how would you frame
I,
it?
all of this is going to be written sort of on a graded scale though, isn't it? Isn't that kind of what we were thinking?
Cause
like,
we have. Go ahead.
I was just thinking, because I could see a site that's disturbing 5,000 square feet having to do X, Y, Z, and then a site that's disturbing 25,000 square feet having to do, W, X, Y, Z, something like that. I was just wondering if we were still thinking that.
I like that idea. I don't know. We had talked about, so the way that Portland has set theirs up is they have kind of different. It's not based on the site size. It's basically like they have a scoring criteria, and like certain practices are worth
Point.
certain points. And they
Gotcha.
need to achieve a minimum number of points overall in order for it to be considered meeting the low impact development standard.
But they have the same point requirement for all the projects.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And so, for example, like for in terms of wetlands, you get maximum points if you choose a site that does not have any wetlands on it.
Everybody's gonna lose on that one.
Like that one, we can't really apply.
Yeah, we don't really have that one.
No, or no one's going to get maximum points, so.
Right.
Will be scored very lowly.
Yeah.
Low.
And I will say, I think South Portland, their threshold is 5,000, so they're
Okay.
requiring it, so it's also good to see kind of so we know when developers come in or contractors, what they're doing with.
They just have such a different landscape of available land that like they don't have, right? Like what we have.
Right, and it gets more into redevelopment there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in terms of a tree incorporating, saving trees in the site assessment, site review, would they identify
Yeah,
any major trees or of a certain
or
size?
forested areas, just in
Forested.
general.
Or forest cover on their lot size and then.
Yeah.
You could also do it to where that's a way to get points.
I'll maintain.
Oh, yeah.
Like
bonus.
the tree survey is required and the showing the forested area, but you get a certain amount of points for not disturbing that or something, or protecting. Protecting trees in the middle of development is really hard, though. You have to really do it right.
Yeah, it would be more.
You're going to kill it in 4 years.
Fringe areas.
Right.
We didn't cut it down, but we did it.
I've seen a lot of those poor trees, yeah.
Yeah.
Eventually.
Yeah, I mean, the challenge is how do we deal with the situation where they cut their lot and then come in and talk about the development that they want to do, because right now they can do that.
Well, I think that's a different ordinance.
Yeah.
I don't think that's necessarily LID. I think that's no clear cutting of non-residential properties is permitted, or no site, something to that effect.
So that would
That's-
have to be created
the new ordinance, or that would fit somewhere else?
I think it would be probably a new ordinance. And it would have to take into account, forestry rules, but you can't just go and clear cut a piece of property because you want to sell it. I mean, a great example, we have a realtor in town that reached out and said, "Hey, can we go ahead and do a preload on our site and get it ready?" I'm like, "No, you can't." So that one was easy because that one would be site disturbance, but we need to maybe put trees in that whole bucket too somehow.
Can we add points on the increasing the buffer size?
Mhm.
Over the 50 feet, the minimum, yeah.
But then, so if we start down that path, we need to know what is acceptable, right? So we start thinking about adding these points up. And you get more points for certain things, right? But at some point, yeah, we'll have to do that evaluation to see, is that actually a good enough, right? Or are we actually going backwards from where we are today?
Yeah, so are they going to meet the minimum criteria by increasing buffers, but then doing kind of nothing else?
Right,
Or is
like,
that going to like
one
tip them
bucket.
over?
Wait, so the minimum DEP standards are all optional? Is that what, that's
No,
how
but
I'm
you're
interpreting
saying
what you're
with
saying?
the points.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, everyone starts with
Yeah.
a B, right? Because
Okay.
we said you can't.
oh, you're saying like everyone starts with 25 feet, so it's a
Yeah.
clear number.
Yeah.
And you're
so
saying if you go to.
Nobody can
50
get an A on this.
Yeah.
Right, so they all start with a B. Look, so shoot for an A, increase your vegetative buffer, increase.
What's the incentive for them to do that?
It would be them not doing
Don't
another.
Star from the planning.
Yeah.
That's what I was
Yeah.
wondering, is that counter with that
Oh,
means they're
I
not
see.
doing minimizing impervious cover because they
don't
did this
have
other
to
thing,
do
and
that.
maybe that's what you have to do to balance the site, I don't know. Like if you're protecting trees, but you're focused in a different area to put more impervious, you know what I mean, like. I don't know,
So,
I think it's.
Cause if we do it as a bonus and there's no kind of like benefit for that bonus, I don't see anyone going for the bonus. They're just gonna do the bare minimum.
Well,
I wouldn't rule it out as an option, but once we get this sort of at a draft point, we'll have to work through a lot of real life scenarios and see what works and what doesn't work. And then,
what do we
you know,
do in
I
the way
mean,
of- I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just think, I mean, I think the incentive and the way to get points is good. I think it's a good idea.
But they have to, what are they
well,
getting
we-
points for?
Yeah.
Yeah,
But what,
what you need to do is set your minimum that meets the DEP standards and goes a little bit above, and we can live with it, right? And then everything else is extra. So you're not gonna allow people to do extra buffers but negate the impervious to get points. You still have to do your baseline. So you get points based off on top of that, right?
Right. And what are we collecting in the way of fees for any of this? So can a fee reduction be the benefit to adding points to your total?
Seems like that idea.
That was actually exactly what I was thinking.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Something tangible,
Impact fees.
but that doesn't impact performance.
Yeah, but our impact fees go to schools, the sewer,
Yeah.
like, something that you can't really connect, say, okay. You don't need to pay for your sewer. I know it sounds. So that's how, what that would be. We could implement,
Yeah, we
fee
can.
and then take it away.
There could be a fee that goes to the land bond. That adds to the land bond. And then if they wish not to pay into the land bond, then
Oh,
add
like our
to
open
some of
Yeah, we
space.
can set
So
our
we have
open
our
space.
space, we do have that in the plan, right?
That we want to establish the open space impact fee.
Mhm.
And they get to.
I- I will caution you guys though on the impact fees. We almost lost our impact fees this year through legislative cycle, and we just doubled our school impact fees. So I think I would find other ways.
does a point system already exist, or we're just saying, should we create that as an incentive?
It doesn't currently exist. It's
Okay.
not currently, the thing is, I don't know, if you might have caught on, this is a really hard, ordinance to implement, to know, like, are they hitting
Yeah.
what they need to hit or
Right.
not? And so, and part of the, EPA's requirements is that all of our stormwater programs are clear, specific, and measurable. And so we are struggling on this one to make it measurable, and so Portland came up. And also like the specificity doesn't really work for LID because you need to have some flexibility to kind of achieve outcomes in various ways. So Portland came up with the idea of a point system that was like, well, we can at least measure this, like we're awarding points based on their, planning board submissions, and whether or not, they're demonstrating that they're meeting these minimum requirements. And they do kind of have opportunities where, like, you can meet a lower standard, like you're gonna meet the DEP standard no matter what. But maybe they're like cumulative points, like you can't just meet the DEP standards. So like when you add up all of those points, you need to have a minimum of like 100 points or something, and the DEP standard might give you like 90. So maybe there are ways that you need to do, go above and beyond in certain areas, and you go above and beyond in the areas where it makes sense for your site. I guess.
So the other tab, the LID requirements, is that based off of the Portland?
Kind of, yeah, that we had
standard?
kind of started that
Okay.
there. We haven't gotten very far because we're still kind of working through what we want the minimum standard to be,
And
so.
even as we're doing this and like say, okay, Portland has something in place, they have been told that theirs doesn't really meet EPA's requirements, that it's because of you're balancing, you're doing more here and less there, and so they haven't got a clear, oh, perfect, check, or we'd all just be copying it and then like tweaking it, right, for Scarborough. The reason why we're not jumping both feet in is that they could be sued also, that it does not meet the EPA requirements.
How do
So,
you measure now? Like, how do you measure the effectiveness of,
We don't.
At all. like, there's no
You
sort
measure
of.
how much wetland is filled in? or
I
something like
mean,
that?
the measure now is like, what's the status of water quality in our streams and the marsh and things like that. But then we also have the sites that have never had to do any stuff like this, so they're still, sending pollutants affecting water
Right.
quality and things like that, so. This is obviously not going to correct the sins of the past, it's to hopefully do things better moving forward. So that we're not having more of an impact.
Just to understand Portland's point system, so their point system. Someone is cobbling enough just for the minimum, or everybody has to meet the minimum and then their point system.
they do have a minimum
Okay,
benchmark, that it's just, these are required,
right,
and then it gets into some more optional kind of things and getting a total number, but again. No one has clearly been told by DEP or EPA that, yes, your ordinance meets the, clear and measurable criteria that we want.
okay.
And so, yeah,
There's no incentive tied to the points, it's just a way to cobble together in whatever
I'm not
way.
sure.
Yeah, I'm not
There's
sure.
the
Immediate
incentive.
minimum. right.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I don't think that anything is incentivized at this point with
Okay.
Portland. I think
Just
it
a
is.
way to add up the points so you can get.
And so that you can get some flexibility in how you're designing your site.
Okay.
Is is Portland's process not approved? Because of,
It's in place.
okay, sorry, by EPA or DEP because of process, time, or because somebody
They're
reviewed
sa-
it?
They're
and
saying it
said-
doesn't go far enough to meet the required minimum standard.
Oh, okay.
Again, it gets into, are they specific enough? Is this measurable? If it's, you know what I mean, everything, and a lot of this is gray. Like impervious cover, like reducing that, everyone can say, well, I wanted 100 spaces and I only built 50, but is that really true? Right, so you get into those kind of things, so it's all subjective, I guess, so. I just feel bad coming to you with like, we don't have the answer. That's why we're trying to pull out from you guys too, like. What are your thoughts around things? Cause we need
Well,
help in
it
our
looks
calling
like-
together too.
I mean, I'm confused because this does, all these pieces, many of these pieces feel very clear, measurable.
They are. They put together, it's a couple of things. How are the applications put together? So it's obvious what they're doing,
Right.
how like. Staff and our kind of, third-party reviewers. They're gonna be looking at a lot of these. It's gonna take a lot of time to review these plans to make sure that they are meeting. The required standards, because. When we get down to kind of like the stormwater BMPs, stormwater treatment systems, there's lots of different options, for example, and so. You know, analyzing all of those to make sure that they're, you know, none have more than an acre of impervious going to them, or that it's the correct application for, for the issues on site, for the pollutants that are on site and things like that. So this seems very clear, like just as we're going through it, but how we actually implement it.
Okay.
It's going to be a whole new, it's going to be new for the designers who are putting together the plans. And it's going to be new for the review staff who have to make sure that they're meeting all of these standards.
So this is dated, but what's coming to my mind is, you know, green building standards, where you'd get a, you know, silver, gold, platinum, and it was a bear to go through these applications and work on the project and take from this and add to this to be able to meet a gold or a platinum, but everyone was clear about it. It was massive. It took consultants. Everyone's clear. So is there some, can I tie that kind of process to this in some way in terms of the way that I'm thinking about it? Is that the nut here that we don't have?
I think potentially the biggest difference I see in my mind is like that was voluntary, and so people were
Right,
were wanting to take that step,
Right.
and this is mandatory, and people
Yeah.
are not going to want to take it.
Yeah.
So I think that, you know, if you're getting a specific kind of, if you're going for a certification, you're going to be very amenable to like providing all of this information in a way that is like easily reviewed and things like that. Whereas if you're pulling together an application and this is gonna add more time,
Right.
more effort, it's,
Your effort's gonna be spent figuring out how to obfuscate.
Yeah.
I do wonder, you know, is there an opportunity to sort of suggest like a Scarborough Gold Star sort of site, you know, like that you're willing to do like lots of tree cover, lots of, you know, permeable surface, like that if you are building in sustainable practices across the board and going above this well above the local standard, like could you get some sort of accolade? I don't know. But
I don't know if that's a big enough incentive for
Probably not.
for people. to-
No.
They're probably, yeah, I think it's a great idea that sometime we should figure out how to implement, like we're doing with the Tree City USA kind of thing, but
Yeah.
95%, 99% of what we see here is gonna be people, you know, who developers who are not gonna be going
No,
for that.
I know.
Yeah.
I guess like Autumn, from your perspective, for all of these requirements, do you see these corresponding to the future application? I'm just trying,
Future application.
like of how, when people are filling it out, I'm just trying to think like if we
Yeah,
could-
yeah,
you know.
I think we can, I like the way Randy thinks about it. Like I feel like we have to create the baseline that we think is going to meet the standard, and then we try to go above and beyond somehow. And maybe the baseline in the baseline has a little bit of wiggle room for that points. I think it's doable.
Can you also require, to do, you know, at least, you know, some sort of mix of approaches so that they don't just rely on one. And-
Yeah, I think you should, well, probably, so I think you could have buckets from each category, right? So you have to get certain points from each category. So there's a baseline, your bare minimum. And maybe, just for example, maybe our 25-foot wetland setback is your bare minimum, but you also have to get 10 points from this minimized site clearing bucket. And so maybe some of those points are based on protecting heritage trees, or maybe some of them are given for an additional 5 foot of vegetative buffer, something like that. I feel like we could get there. But I kind of think dealing with, I think it needs to be as clear as possible.
Yeah.
Because, and I know some of it's not, there are, like when you get into the stormwater techniques and those things are not as clear, but we can say the baseline is no more than, an acre of drainage is coming to one point. We can do that. That's your baseline. And then you get extra points or the required points for doing different techniques or making them even smaller, maybe things like that.
Concerned about building in the site clearing, could there be like a percentage, like if applicable to the site, obviously, but a percentage of, like, maintain a certain percentage of tree cover or something that is measurable,
Mhm.
Or not.
Right.
or whatever, whatever the kind of piece is, but have something that describes that you would preserve a certain.
Yeah,
I think so. And I think we are going to have to come up with some sort of graded version though. I don't think we can require across the board the same thing for sites disturbing like 5 to 10,000 square feet as we would for over an acre.
But if we could try to like bucket them and categorize them. then we could
Yeah,
try to-
yeah. Like you might not be able to save the trees if you're developing, a 8,000 square foot lot. It just
Yes.
legitimately probably isn't possible.
But isn't there
But
other
you-
alternatives, like maybe replanting?
I was gonna
So,
say, yeah, you
Well,
could
those are already required. And like, that's why some of these, we already do these things, like prohibit planting of invasive plants, landscape design. We could add a little bit more to our landscape requirements. Some of them we already do, a lot of them. So like, if these are the minimum standards, then maybe we still continue to add, maybe our minimum is already met with our ordinances, but then you still have to get 5 points from this section, and maybe that is, achieved by, I don't know, I'm just talking,
Yeah,
putting
whatever.
in an additional, a higher percentage of natives rather than the percentage we require, something to that effect, to make it better. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, just something kind of measurable, I mean, it doesn't have
I
to
just
be-
kind of can see it as like, okay, we have maybe four different thresholds, and here are the standards, and here are the points. Here's the baseline for everyone, and here are the points that you have to get. And maybe it's 5 points for this square footage and 10 points for this, and so on. And I feel like we could probably get it pretty standardized and easily understood.
I love your optimism.
Yeah, I like the suggestion to run through some real life scenarios later to kind of validate it. and see, like,
Yeah.
oh, this will work, and it's like, oh, it works both ways, so I think that's a good idea.
Well, Angela's perfect at that. She could probably name you 10 things off the top of her head that are like, oh my God, I wish we could have done this instead of this. And so we could almost back our way into it, I think.
Good to me.
I like the idea that, you have additional points that they must collect in some fashion, and then.
Yeah,
And they have to be from at least 2 additional buckets, or, so that they're not just all putting, or generally try to go for that, maybe an additional point if they diversify and.
Yeah.
And techniques.
yeah, I would like, if we, I think some of these we do want to tweak so that we have a higher threshold than the minimum standard, for example, applicability. But as we talk about it, I do like the idea of, like, if the DEP standard is worth X number of points, but in order to be permitted to meet our ordinance, you actually have to achieve a number that's higher than the minimum
Right,
standard, and they have flexibility on
How they do it.
How they get
on
there.
how they get there.
Angela, are there other principles of LID that aren't in these 9 categories? That we should be thinking about, or we could be thinking about?
I can think of.
And then,
I guess we've been talking about these for so long that, yeah, I'm not aware of anything else. Isn't captured somehow in there.
and then in the first one, minimize site clearing, does that also cover practices during site clearing and development? So, I'm thinking about fences to,
Erosion
Yeah.
sedimentation control. We
Yeah.
have a separate
So
ordinance.
yeah, that's,
Okay.
it's in place, yeah.
So they could still clear cut a site and then come before,
currently.
Yes.
before the site review. Wow.
That's-
Technically, they can't clear, even through forestry, they can clear, they can get a forestry permit and they can take down trees. But they are not supposed to clear cut for development. It's like 2 different things. And
So if
I
they
don't-
cut
I-
a tree down, that's not clear cutting, that's not.
say that again.
Forest management.
Yeah.
So they can cut down the
Selective
tree-
cutting.
They could cut all the trees, but that's not clearing it.
I select all of them.
I guess I've seen
Yeah.
that on some properties where they've. Maybe they're thinking of developing, maybe not this year or next year, but in the future, and they'll clear cut it and try to dry up some of the wet area.
Okay.
I've seen
Mhm.
that.
Oh.
I don't know how you get kind of around that, cause
Yeah.
you can, to your point, you can log on your
Right,
property.
Right,
And they have a lot of rights, and loggers can do a lot of things in the state of Maine. That we don't really have much control over locally.
Well, and I mean, somebody could get a permit for one thing and do something else and be like, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, I mean, we see it a lot around lakes and things like that where, it's, you beg forgiveness, you factor the cost of the fine into your project
Right.
and you do whatever you want.
Right.
And there have been a couple examples recently where DEP has come down pretty hard. But it's typically the norm that like people who have the money to do these large projects, they factor the fines into their project cost.
back to the site clearing, so the minimizing site disturbance then is only. Disturbance during the course of the project, not disturbance.
Well, it is kind of the overall, part of it is you only open up a certain, no more than DEP requires no more than an acre opened at a time, so bare soil on a site at a
Right.
time. But this is also looking, once the site is fully developed, like you haven't just gone in, grubbed everything, like mowed down everything.
But you could do that before you develop it.
Well,
That's what.
I think there's
Yeah.
some gray area in there,
Yeah.
but Autumn says no.
You're not supposed to.
But what happens before
And I-
we,
And I guess I'm
That's what saying.
thinking, I mean, have you guys seen anybody in Scarborough that's done that other than the residential property on Holmes Road that's just gone in and clear cut? And then come in for a site plan submittal?
I don't know, what about Eight Corners, did they?
Well, they have
That was all, they followed everything they were supposed to do on that one.
yeah, that's how our current zoning is written.
That's because you guys don't like our zoning ordinance.
That is one of the things though, when you're thinking about like the 8 Corner site, or there's other there's large projects in town. Where yes, the site plan that they get approved has a lot of trees that come down, right? So it looks like mass clearing. Because for them, it's cost effective to have the loggers come in once. And so they'll do
Yeah, I know.
more than 1 acre. They can do like a massive amount, or do like we were talking about earlier, preloads, or do all of that kind of rough excavation first. And so I don't know if that's part of how the phasing or construction sequence goes, or things like that, that to the point is developers need to factor in, if they're gonna do phasing, they should only open up phase 1 and not come at us saying, we wanna do all 5 phases, grub it all out, but I'm only gonna build phase 1 right now. Does that matter?
But, the adjacent
Well-
property was we're gonna do this one thing, but we all knew it was gonna be part 1, 2, and 3. But they only told us publicly about part 1, right? I don't know what's happened to 2 and 3, but
For which?
the parking lot across from the brewery.
Oh, yeah.
So I was like, opposite things are happening.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
You,
No.
For
I
site
don't know that we're gonna
clearing-
solve the world's problems with the LID ordinance. Or, yeah.
but you could put into ordinance in our site plan ordinance in landscaping that a minimum of 10% of existing tree coverage must remain. You can do things like that. It's just, and
Wetlands, it's
Yeah.
probably more than 10% of any lot in Scarborough.
Yeah.
So that would
Say-
automatically.
So again, we just go through scenarios, like let's take a look at like specific projects, we could do that and see
Yeah.
what is that percentage that makes sense.
So you'd be
Yeah.
like, oh, well, I thought 10%, but when I actually look at it, 20 would actually be more of
Yeah.
like a stretch goal.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. It's just back to the, like, kind of the point system and stuff. I know it's probably gonna be the harder part, but I feel like if we could try to get a better sense of like what we want the end to look like what do we want to tell people they achieved? And then, because in my experience, whenever I do process building, I try to start at the end and then work
Yeah.
backwards if possible. So again, that's
Yeah.
often easier said than done, but if we could even just say, well, this is what we'd like, these are the options of how your site could be evaluated. And then that might just kind of help us build it in the back end. But
Yep, I like that. Yeah, I like that better to try to figure out what's some sites that we would, do we have any sites in town that would give a gold star to right now, kind of starting there and, or if the silver star, if they had done this, it would have been a gold and we kind of start there and kind of work.
Or I was
see.
designing these slides, this is
Yeah.
what it would look like. I would give this one a star.
Yeah, it's good to have like an ideal that we're gonna aiming for.
it just kind of
Yeah.
helps, in my experience, it
Yeah.
kind of helps you focus. I mean,
Yeah.
again, the devil's in the details a lot
Yeah.
of times, but just gives you somewhere. And then you're
Yeah.
like, oh, well, if I do this and this, then that'll put me closer.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that would be more of a gold star situation, just
Yeah.
something like that.
Agreed. Yeah, I like that.
So. I'm like, how do we finish walking through these? I feel like there are some where maybe we want to like call out where we definitely want the local standard to like be above the DEP minimum. Like, we don't even want it, like for one of mine is like the culvert crossings, so they only refer, the guidance that DEP gave only references Stream Smart. We've got coastal tidal culverts in Scarborough, so we threw coastwise in there, and then their standard, DEP standard said only new culverts. Well, what if we're replacing a culvert? And so I want to make sure that like that's capturing. So for me, it's like, I don't even, the DEP standard, I don't even think it should be there. Like, I think that we should really look at our standard because we have other kind of constraints that or situations that we're working with.
Are you, asking us essentially on the recommended local standard if we're all okay with
Yeah.
how it? Because I am, except for.
Or maybe
Shade
you're
buffer
thinking
that
that
one
should be more, should what we're recommending, you guys wanna ramp that up?
Well, I would love to see vegetative buffer be higher than that.
Yeah.
And we've all talked about that.
Yeah.
For quite a while.
Yeah, I feel like we can, and like. Yeah. I think we can.
I almost feel like we're too in the weeds at this point.
Okay.
We've got to figure out the format of how it all works together, and then I think we can play with all the numbers.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Is
I
that
was just
fair?
hoping that if there's anything that like people feel very strongly about that.
Yeah.
we want,
Like I think
Like-
that you will find that there will be a bit more support, and it won't be such a big fight for vegetated buffers at this point with
Yeah.
the changes that are coming down. Councilor Shoup, do you agree? I think that things are changing a little bit, and I don't know if you all are aware, but LD 1829, LD 2173 right now, it's slated to be going into effect next July, which is great. It gives us more time, but it takes our minimum, it's more about residential development, but it takes our minimum lot sizes down to 5,000 square feet. So it's good that we can get these sorts of things in place. So I think there will be more support for things like this.
So I guess that's why I think it's like Jamie's saying though is helpful from the group there. Where do you guys see that local standard? This is what staff's recommending, but doesn't mean that that's where we start. If there's another threshold.
It looked good to me.
I think it depends on what the resource is. Like if it's a small, I think if it's a stream, it's different than a smaller wetland, then it's different than a coastal wetland or a bigger forest. I think it's based on what the resource is.
But we kind of went down that path a little bit with the wetland protection ordinance. We heard a lot of people talking about whether, you know, what kind of level the wetland was.
Mhm.
And I don't want to get too weedy on, well, that wetland is more important than that wetland. And so we kind
Well,
of
just, yeah.
It's a lot simpler for us, probably staff too, to just be like, it's a wetland, this is what we do. Rather than like, well, let's critique it and see if it has it's highly functioning or not, or,
Oh, okay.
you know what I mean, to give it a value.
Right, does that overcomplicate it or? is
That's
that-
what I'm
or-
afraid of.
Or does
We
that
get
give you more?
Too weedy.
Well,
Or-
I mean, if you're gonna need metrics too, like again, depends on how far down the rabbit hole you wanna go.
I know that's where some of the opposition came with the wetland protection ordinance. Wetlands the same.
We took another pass at this after you all did more work on it. We'd still be able to. Is there,
Oh, yeah.
maybe another way of asking that question is there anything on this where we need to understand, speak now, or you've already gone too far down the road?
No.
Okay. You've already bought the dress and, right?
I don't even have a ring yet.
Can I ask a clarifying question about the maximum type of concentration piece? Like, should we limit this to just institutional and commercial? I also wonder about, adding like residential projects to, I mean.
It could be of a certain size, ones that would be sort of equivalent to.
Yeah, I mean, this would have, so this was basically requiring all treatment systems to only treat an acre or less of impervious cover. And they were saying in larger sites, for example, the Downs, where it is kind of more of a campus, that you could treat more than 1 acre, but it doesn't give an upper limit. So that's why, you know, the suggestion there was 3 acres. But everywhere else, you know, you're capped at 1 acre of impervious going to a stormwater treatment system. So I wasn't sure. I think it was Angela's question, should we limit this to just institutional and commercial? I wasn't sure.
So
Were you thinking like subdivision could apply to that too, Angela? Was that your thought?
I don't think that was my comment.
No, it definitely was.
schools.
It was, yeah.
This should
Schools,
be,
medical facilities, shoot.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, was that
Some
you?
of our, the larger commercial spaces, is that,
Yeah, let me. Read it again.
I was thinking of like the Downs where you have some significant. Higher density residential.
Yeah, I think
Oh,
that,
it's because the minimum or standard though is for institution and commercial sites, and I was questioning, should we only limit it to them, right? So.
oh,
Yeah.
that's two separate thoughts.
Oh, okay.
So sorry, it's not clear. So require all stormwater treatment measures treat less than an acre of, less than or equal to impervious cover, an acre of an impervious cover. And then there was an exception in there that institutional or commercial sites could treat more than
Oh,
an acre of impervious.
Okay.
Yeah.
So sorry, that wasn't clear. That was me translating the DEP standard into that table. So basically the institutional and commercial sites can meet a higher standard or a lower standard.
Because they want,
they could treat more than.
They can treat more than an acre
right,
per
Um,
system.
Yeah, I guess I don't have a real thought around that, other than, like you said, we've seen ponds that are an acre in town. Which means they're treating a lot of acreage all going to that pond, and I don't think that is, I feel like the exact opposite of the intent of a low
Right,
impact
because they
development.
want,
Right.
they
Right.
want more treated, more in a more dispersed way,
Yeah.
right?
Right,
Mimicking
And
nature.
infiltrating at the source and
Exactly.
things like that, so you start treating it right where it's
Strip.
coming up.
Right, so avoiding all that runoff, right?
Yeah,
Getting
so,
it to infiltrate immediately is, or as close to.
Yeah.
Hit the ground.
assuming you can infiltrate it.
Yeah.
On our sites.
Angela, would it make sense to include maximum distances that runoff can get to the stormwater treatment?
you already talking about this
Pond
time
or-
concentration, weren't you?
Well, that's just because that's the section that it's in.
Oh, so the intent of that time of concentration is exactly that, it's a raindrop and where it falls on the earth and it takes, how long does it take to get to kind of your stormwater treatment facility, those measures, and
And-
so trying to limit that.
Well, and that's basically saying
Right,
they
so-
want everything to go through like a vegetated channel as opposed to a pipe. Because if you're piping it, the time of concentration is fairly low because it's
Right.
going really fast.
Right, so you can slow it down and get it to, if possible, sink inward. So,
So what was your comment, Autumn?
My question was, could you limit the distance, like the size and the distance? Is
The
that
treatment
like?
system is from the impervious cover that it's
Mhm.
interesting.
Well, I think you're kind of achieving that already, right, by limiting the subcatchment or the area that is actually draining to that.
It is. Okay.
I think that might.
I don't know, because I've seen some subdivisions that they're piping a really long way.
Yeah. But if you, total up that area, it's probably like 5 acres that are going to that pond or something, you know what I mean, cause it's getting through those pipes all the way to the pond.
Right.
Is there a way to, you have this section, or the DEP standard has this section about roof runoff, like what if there was then also flow of over vegetative buffers for other parts of the.
Yeah, that's,
Is
there,
already-
yeah, that's part of the,
Oh, that's in here.
yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Kind of the vegetative channel. Okay.
Good.
And then the minimize lawns, maximize landscaping that encourages runoff retention, so that is kind of like the.
Okay. I was just.
Have the
getting- I
water
was
flow
like-
over vegetation, so it
Yeah.
can slow down and soak into the ground. As long as you have good soils, that allow for infiltration. Which, as we've talked about, is the challenge in some areas of Scarborough. So. So, I think that what I'm hearing from Autumn's suggestion is that we go back through and kind of work towards a point system and set like the minimum. I don't know, Autumn, what was your suggestion?
Well,
Okay.
I'm thinking, okay, so I need to sit down with you guys and understand like the sites that this will apply to and come up with maybe, I'm thinking first we come up with 4 standard site sizes. And then we take your 9 categories and we have our minimum standard, and these things must be met. And that's sort of your baseline. And then depending on the size, maybe A, B, C, and D, you have to get 10 points extra in each of the 9 components for the biggest of sizes. And this is all just hypothetical. And then maybe the smallest of the size, the D site, only needs 1 point in each of the things. So we come up with our baseline, and then we have options for the rest. Like you have one about sodium chloride control. And so maybe we especially for the smaller sites where there's probably not as much, they're not even gonna have the opportunity to treat less than an acre because their site is so small. So maybe the baseline for them is different and they have to do snow removal. They have to do a plan where it has to be removed or some other chemical. I don't know, but something like that is what I'm thinking. Because I think each different size of site is going to have to be treated a little bit different. And
But
then
you're saying everything that's under, so just remembering that I guess I'm curious though, is you're putting these buckets of 4 different sizes that are below the DEP threshold, right? Because anything over that DEP, the 1 acre, we have to do this. There's no category.
Right. Because you wanted to do everything, right? Up to over 5,000 square feet,
You're saying between 5,000 square feet and 43,
560. Yeah.
that's where you're breaking that up into 4 buckets.
Well,
And then,
and maybe just 2, but yeah, maybe there's some threshold.
yeah, because I don't think we need that many.
Right, that makes sense. But I was also thinking, like, even for sites, so all of these standards apply. DEP application is for over an acre. But to me, a site that's that's an acre versus a site that's 20 acres is really different. So I think our minimum should be better.
But our minimum is set by DEP, so that's why I'm saying it. They're saying.
But we could go above.
Yeah.
Is
So
what
is
I'm
that-
thinking.
Category part that you were thinking of, just had a best.
Yeah, so like that would be the bigger size. Just
I'm just gonna wrap my site that's an acre that we don't want to hit the same standard as a 20-acre site.
Mhm.
Why wouldn't
Not
you?
that
just
you
mean
don't-
there's it's more flexibility on them.
Yes, the smaller sites I think need different options to get I guess I need a better understanding of like the DEP minimum standard for
Look at is those
minimize
1-acre
soil
sites might be the
compaction.
trickier
Less
ones.
wiggle room, right? So it's like, how do I fit all of this in 1 acre?
Well, it's
Yeah.
just on a small site. I still think an acre is a pretty big area. So maybe that we need to look at specifics. Like you said, we'll pull out examples of like, okay, here's a site. And does it make sense to give them flexibility or say, no, they should be meeting that same standard?
Yeah.
Maybe we need to look at examples.
No, I think you're misunderstanding me. I'm saying everybody has to meet the minimum and then our baseline that's our baseline. The minimum is our baseline.
Oh,
And
so you
then
think bonus points are required?
bonus
Yeah.
points are required. And then that's the flexible part.
Gotcha. Now I understand.
That's what I'm trying to say. And it's based on how big the site is because there's more opportunity to get more bonus points for other things on a bigger site, I guess.
Would you require more bonus points to get permitted on a larger site?
Yes. Yes.
And then you could require that they have, some points from different buckets of,
They'd have to hit all buckets probably or something,
Right.
or maybe not.
Yeah. Like that's why I was saying, maybe those bigger sites have to get 10 extra points from all the components, but the smaller sites are only looking for 1. Or maybe there's only 1 from 4 components, that kind of thing. To get I think that gives you, like, we're meeting the minimum requirements, but we're going above and beyond where we feel it's really important, but we're setting the thresholds based on what sites can actually achieve. Does that make sense? In my brain, it makes sense. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not the standard here, but yes, I guess.
You're watching us make sausage, isn't this?
Like
Well, I
I'm
think because
picturing the
because it
Matrix
gets-
and the words come from Jamie and Angela. I'm just picturing like this. Okay.
I think that the scaling of it, that even though an acre is still a lot, it's a C word that I got, there's maybe more consistency within that given landscape that makes fewer opportunities available to get those bonus points.
Yeah.
Which when you scale it to larger areas, there are different buckets that become available. So I like the scaling of it that Autumn is suggesting, because it keeps the flexibility at the right desk.
Now, I do have
And
a
this
question.
Angela. Oh, I'm
Go ahead.
sorry.
no, go ahead.
Angela and Jamie, this is going to apply to everything, residential, commercial, all the things, right?
Well, that go through site plan subdivision, right? I mean, we're not gonna have a,
single family house.
it's not a single family residential, it's gonna trigger this.
Well, I was just thinking about the 5,000 square foot number.
But it's still gonna be under site.
It would-
And subdivision.
Yeah, it's whatever, it's planning board is really anything that goes before
Okay.
planning.
So I had a
But it
question.
makes me think we
Yeah.
should probably add something, maybe not this specific, but some of these concepts to our residential zoning districts when we start getting 4 units on 5,000 square feet. lot.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So
And
one
that don't have
question
to
I-
go through subdivision.
Yes.
One more time.
All right.
So that could
Lexi.
be like the extra column.
Can you mute her?
Now Cressy.
Okay, so we're talking about the minimum DEP standard, but we're proposing some different ones, like you know, the making the, setting the threshold for the development that creates, the impervious, you know, the minimum for impervious cover, lowering it to 10,000. So would that be part of our minimum, or is that getting
That's
extra
what-
points?
I think the recommended local standard column would be
Part of that minimum.
required, that's your baseline,
That's,
everybody has.
that would be part of our baseline, for which they'd have to meet to get that baseline set of points. And then we would still require them to go above that to some degree with some additional
Yeah.
points.
Yeah.
Selected from different buckets. Okay,
I think so. I think we're gonna have to kind of work through some of these scenarios to really understand what that means.
Yeah.
so for example, I would, you know, that threshold that lower 10,000, I would like to be that, I'd like that to be part of the minimum,
Mhm.
not additional points.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're
Okay.
saying.
Okay.
It's almost for your grading system, like, that's just the baseline, so
Right.
maybe you don't get a colored star. It's
Yeah,
just
maybe you don't,
that.
there are no,
Then if you
there are
wanna
no
get
available
above-
bonus points
You
because,
know, it's like, yeah, you did the bare minimum.
Yeah.
And that's fine, then your overall metrics could be, well, this year we got, you know, X number more.
And so, and the 50 feet of vegetated buffer would be part of that.
Mhm.
It'll be more. Uh, on 7, sorry, I know we're trying to wrap this up, but on 7, it doesn't look here like there's a lot of quantification. You can't measure this, right? So.
Yeah, we
and
can,
that,
we can set kind of vegetative cover, like percentages, are you thinking for?
Okay,
for
or-
lots?
you know, or could it be count of tree or size of tree? So, you know, 1 tree on a small lot. You need a lot more coverage on a larger lot kind of thing.
Mhm.
And size of tree, so you plant 1 tree that's gonna grow up, its mature height is 4 feet is not a tree.
Uh-huh.
So, but I would imagine we've got stuff that kind of addresses this, but that looks like an area we want more.
Yep.
Measurable.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I'm good.
Well, in the LID requirements tab, is that the workup that you, like, that's based on the Portland system? or
That was
is
kind
that
of looking at Portland system,
But
and I
this
think
is-
that we're
this
gonna,
Us,
yeah, the LID
Working
the
on that.
requirements tab is like older work, so I think that we're gonna, we may go back and revisit it once we
But
have a
I
better
think-
idea.
way things are kind of quantified
Yes.
in there, like this percentage of, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's really helpful and
Yeah.
it's clear and seems like.
Yeah, and that
yeah,
was
that's
based
like an
on,
actionable item, I can preserve, you know,
Yeah.
50-foot buffer.
yeah, and so this was, this is based on kind of Portland scoring
Yeah.
criteria, so it was a first step.
Another thing, Angela, you think there's enough that you can have, instead of looking, well, this is really yours, we talked a little bit about looking at past or present developments as examples of what was good and what could be different. Does it make sense even to come up with, you know, a made up example that is characteristic of all the things you're gonna find on a Scarborough site? And work with this made up example? I don't know, that's well, I just was thinking, cause it's so hard, cause there's so much that goes into what's already been done.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's when you're like, oh, that's when I can see you all weighing and moving and that sort of thing. If you start with like a blank slate that just has all the different characteristics that one would find when they come to Scarborough, one is
Yeah.
building.
Yeah, I mean, we could look at that too as one of the scenarios, yeah, definitely. I think it's just probably more vivid in our minds for staff that's saying, I wish we could do
Mm.
something, but our ordinance ties us, right?
yeah.
So you kind of, that's our fresh in our head
Yeah.
Right.
on. That's too bad that that site went through that way.
Right.
Or if that had been tweaked, so we haven't supported the ordinance. So those are the type of things that I think are
Okay.
probably easier to get at, but it doesn't mean that that's not a good exercise to do, because there's other things that haven't happened yet that, you know, we haven't lived through maybe, that we'd be able to pull out of
Mm.
that, even that scenario. Yeah.
And then is there any plan for, or idea or concept for, or concepts and plans?
That sounds pretty familiar.
To measure what the positive impact is of, you know, expanded buffers on wetlands, like now that we've had 20 feet for a couple of
I
years.
would love to do that,
Yeah.
yes.
That's probably grant money, isn't it?
Like in
Well,
all
I'm
your
wondering if
spare
there's an
time.
easy way to do it. I mean, so it has been implemented for a year, right?
I think-
Did we last-
Yeah, I was gonna say the big, like, we don't necessarily have like scientific data to measure the impact, but we do have like the practical anecdotal information, like it's been in place for a year because it was January 25 when that passed, and sites are complying with it. So like,
Nobody
So the
left
question is,
Scarborough.
If
to
can we
stop
figure
building
out the
it?
difference, like what,
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd have to look and see, is there a way to make assumptions to say what would have been filled
Mm.
if we didn't have this in place? I mean, that might be something we can kind of
yeah,
wrap our heads around and trying to figure out, like, we saved this many square feet of wetland from being filled with this ordinance, like, maybe that's something we can quantify.
mhm. Yeah, I like that idea.
Even that is gonna be a lot of assumptions, because people came to us with, here's a plan that meets your ordinance. Or it was close and we tweaked it and they got there. So I don't know what it would have looked like if that ordinance wasn't in place.
Right, right.
But we could probably make some assumptions. Around that, I don't know. But I would love to have a number around that, yeah. And just show kind of, we're making progress, I think that would be really great.
Or, you know, in 5
Especially, oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say in 5 years, we can get DEP, I mean, DEP keeps a kind of a running tally of filled wetlands.
Well, that's what I was gonna say,
So-
so we always rank as the highest or one of the highest for permitted wetland fill. And so that's why I think it would be good to
Yeah.
counter that with Scarborough is here with wetland
Oh,
impacts, but it could be worse, because look at what we've done.
Yeah.
And to your point is, maybe it could justify actually ramping that up to say just 25 feet. And we've been able to like preserve this much wetland, if we could double that, you know, it's just continuing on that path and.
Yeah, and on the, I mean, sort of not, on the other side or adjacent to it. We increased the buffer zone and we still had these developments.
Right,
Completed or started, so, you know. Nobody
Right.
lost money, but back buckets of money because of this
didn't
additional.
develop
Yeah.
because of the,
Yeah, we didn't have anyone walk out with the site will not, we can't develop on the
Yeah.
site because your wetland impact, your wetland protection. Ordinance, I don't recall.
Just one.
It was
Oh,
not
just
part of
one.
this.
this one, but it was not a good site to begin with, right?
Which is
It's
probably
okay,
what
I can,
want that development in town. Yeah,
Are there, which sites come up to mind that you would love to say, we would have done that differently?
I don't know if I wanna call anybody
No.
out, but I can.
Like,
Think
for
of
example,
some.
the place where I work, Cabela's,
Pick a, well, that would
That
have been
would be-
one of the ones they didn't wanna name.
yeah. That's a.
Yeah, there's a lot of parking there.
Yeah. Kind of impervious cover, you know, probably papered over a bunch of wetlands, I mean.
Yeah.
you know,
Might be a
all that.
better offline conversation.
Right. But it's good that we can, like I said, run through some examples
Yeah.
of, we did that with DEP when they're going through their chapter 500 updates, so updating their stormwater regulations and being on the technical committee for that, we did pick a site in Scarborough that was not good for the environment. They put in as much as they possibly could and met the ordinance, which was hard for staff to get through, but it came out of that was they were trying to make sure that all sites work, like even with the new standards. this one wasn't, but I mean, at the end of the day, we got to, this probably shouldn't have happened, right?
Right.
So
Not every-
that's also an outcome to say, we can go through these scenarios and like, that doesn't quite work with the ordinance, but maybe that's not the best way we wanna develop, you know, have the land developed in Scarborough. So we might get to that point too, where we're like, well, there's a reason why we wanna put these measures in place.
Yeah.
Um,
You have to.
and you can still develop, you just maybe can't pave every square inch of the lot, that kind of stuff. Or even 85% is high.
Right,
So
so
see it on the face of the earth.
I was gonna ask Angela and Jamie one more question. Can some of these be met? These don't all have to be contained in this one low impact development ordinance. Could we meet some of these requirements by changing other zoning?
You can, but we need to document it.
We
and
just have to
need-
document it.
Yeah.
we'll
Because
need
some
to,
of these
like-
might not be points, but we could talk about it offline. Like we might just change our impervious area requirements across the board and we've met the DEP. Would
Right.
that meet the standard?
It was as long as we document it well and we can.
Of
we
what
can
we've
show how it's
did.
being
Do
met.
that. I know when I came, I had to go through our MS4 permit and find all the little pieces that we did erosion sediment control or stormwater. And they were filtered all over the place, so it was a big exercise. And I said, I know we're meeting the requirement. It was just a challenge to make sure that you could document it for DEP that we were meeting it. If that makes sense. So it maybe even duplicating more, like you said, put it where it needs to go throughout, but then also have it kind of quantified here too, maybe?
Or if, can this just reference the applicable?
Yeah, as
Um,
long as it's staying, yeah.
part of the zoning ordinance or wherever it lives currently.
Okay.
Yeah.
As long as like this, if, since this is our own ordinance, as will be a standalone ordinance, if we can just say, please see such and such section.
Right. And that's how we
Yeah,
comply.
Got
just
it.
so when the auditors come.
Yeah.
They know where to go to look to make sure that that is being met easily.
Okay.
And future staff can find.
And
yeah,
future staff, yeah.
Can do that in an audit, yes.
Jamie, can I make one comment? You know, this might not apply, I don't know, I haven't reviewed everything. But I just wanted to bring up, there are culverts not associated with development. That could fall under this. I'm thinking of culverts under the Eastern Trail or other trails. Farm roads that might be handled differently, internal farm roads that. You know, are not kind of what I think a lot of this has been for. And maybe they're all the same standards, but maybe there are some differences too.
So how are those being permitted, you mean?
Well, any culvert that has to be replaced has to be permitted by DEP, so a
Right.
replacement would have to.
But we don't see those necessarily all. Through our local, I guess, the planning board or,
code. That's-
yeah. I mean, we get copied after the fact or something, if it's a permit by rule or something like that, we get. There was one on this road or something like that, we don't get a whole lot of detail.
So we would, like, in order for
I
us
was
to
trying to
see,
figure
them, we would
out
have to have a,
rather- yeah.
basically set a culvert permit or culvert replacement permit so that we can require these standards. Or so that it goes through a local review process to make sure it's hitting these standards. So it's definitely something to think about and keep on our radar.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up the fact that there are culverts that aren't associated with kind of traditional.
Yeah, that, yes, that would be missed with this, yeah, definitely.
All right, so we'll continue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was my piece of new business, which was about stewardship guide for homeowners. We can mostly table this. I can send an email to people. But I think it kind of actually would dovetail really nicely with the work that we're doing on the low impact development standards to think about how we might make some recommendations for homeowners, for people who, you know, who are doing home projects and like thinking about building in conservation minded projects. So I will communicate with you all and maybe we can meet at some.
And it was a recommendation of the open space plan.
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
ties
and
into
we,
that.
and you and I talked about that a while back, so. Great. And now it's time for Karen's town council update.
Sure, thank you. I apologize for my absence the last couple months. So just in regards to the conversation, I know I entered late. In regards to low impact development, I'll probably, if you've heard me say this before, I think everything's a negotiation. So I think if we're gonna want stuff that goes above and beyond what they're asking, we should aim high. And then if we have to kind of negotiate and come down a little, I mean, I'm not happy that we came down to 25 with the wetland setback, but you know, imagine if we hadn't started higher where we would have ended up. So that's just kind of my first thoughts is like, I think we should just try to be, you know, as, I don't know if restrictive is the right word, as protective as possible if we can with that. I don't know if you guys have spoken about town council goals. I don't believe I've spoken to you guys about town council goals because I missed last month's meeting. Unfortunately, as you've kind of seen, we have a lot going on in town. So as I look at our conservation goals for this year, they're very short. They did not have a lot to come to you guys. Our ones for growth and things like that are a lot bigger. But I did want to point out that first, you know, obviously we're continuing to support the 30 by 30. But I do know that we have specific goal to expand, try to use land bond money like within the town. So the town, I know, is tasked right now with trying to find some more possible recreation space. But I think generally the goal is just like, there's only so much land left. So let's just try to grab what we can and find a use for it. And if we can use it for conservation or recreation, I think that would be great. And then also in line with the conversation you just had, the one goal that I do think directly falls onto you guys is that the town council is curious in expanding or at least finding ways to limit tree cutting for commercial development. So, you know, I apologize. I don't know the timeline of LID, but there is, I think, you know, for me right now, from now until November, I think it would be great to come forward with something that that we can put forward now. So I will let Jamie and the chair and Kathleen, you guys can talk about that more about when you guys want to do that, what that might look like. But I do know there is interest in the council and I was able to get that as one of the goals. So I'd love to keep that. I'd love to move that forward if we can, because again, you know, I don't know where we'll be in a year and if anyone will care the way that I do. So I think that would be great. I asked Jamie to forward you guys just a letter that the town council received from the state, simply just because I do feel like there's, I mean, just some conservation aspects to the idea of what's going on our beaches in regards to so we have a beach management agreement with the state in regards to the piping plovers. And so we received that letter. I guess all I will say is that we have a workshop coming up before our April 15th meeting. I encourage anyone who has an opinion on this to please come and share it with town council. We're getting a lot of one opinion right now. And so it would be great to get varying opinions. And I will say some people are uncomfortable coming and speaking publicly. And so I encourage you, if you do have an opinion, to please email the council and let them know how you feel about that. And so those are probably the most conservation things. So I just wanted to update you if you don't care, do care. Right now, council is really busy with a short-term rental ordinance. If you care about that, I encourage you to email town council because we are getting one-sided opinions right now about that. And it's, I think it would be helpful to get different opinions, more opinions on that issue as well. And then if anyone has been paying attention, I'm not sure, I guess it's happening that we're closing Route 1 North across the marsh this summer. We're going to be down to one lane. They're going to try that. I'm not sure. There's a workshop on that the following week. So if you have any interest in that, I mean, part of the reasoning behind that is, you know, obviously we have to raise the road, but we want to do it in a thoughtful way and also be able to provide pedestrian access across the marsh. I could go on about that, but I won't, because that's not you guys. But, you know, those are some of the big things that are happening in the council right now. I am the chair of the ordinance committee right now. I don't know if I will be the chair come November. So I always say, if you guys have some ideas that you're really passionate about, some ordinance tweaks or things like that you think would be great, I encourage you now to bring them forward. I will gladly entertain them on the ordinance committee, try to get support. You guys always come up with some great ideas. So I'm looking forward to seeing where we go from here. Thanks.
I don't have a PGLB update. I do know they're still working on revising their evaluation criteria to align it with the open space plan. I believe once their evaluation and revision is complete, it goes to council for their review and approval. Transportation Committee, we can talk about Route 1.
We had transportation committee last night. It started with a presentation from Metro, is the first thing. And they're enhancing the fixed route. So it would come in from downtown Portland through our Route 1 corridor through the Downs in Market Street and over to the Cabela's Park and Ride and do that loop back and forth. And that would be a stop that would pick up every 45 minutes wherever you are along that route. From there, they also have a service area of microtransit, which is essentially a ride share, and goes through an app. And if you're in that service area, it's a 10 passenger van that would pick you up and take you where you want to go. That was something that the library trustees and some of the H-Friendly committee has been pushing forward to try to get to the library. That's and they are in that service area. So I think I'm hoping it's a success. And that they keep, we're going to be pushing out as it rolls out this summer, to try to get people to use that. I thought it was interesting. Metro mentioned that it's a pilot program that's similar to the one at Falmouth, and they have heat maps so we can see where everybody's using it. And they found it, a family of 5 is just bright red on their map because the whole family uses the micro transit and they think it's fantastic. It's like from middle school through high school, through the parents, everybody's using it. So
Cool.
I thought that, so they pick up right at their door because you are a super user.
And it's super affordable. It's $2 for a 90-minute kind of like block of time. So you can get on, yes.
Okay.
So it's not like Uber that's like $15, it's $2. And right, no surging.
Yeah.
And so you have 90 minutes to like, if you need to call for microtransit to get to the main line to then get into Portland and ride the bus elsewhere, you've got 90 minutes and it's $2. And so
Cool.
it's like super affordable. And then seniors, veterans and students, it's 50%. So it's $1
Right.
per 90-minute block of time.
How old is the
That's a good question.
It does start out free at first. They
Right.
want people to try it and have a good experience and come back. So I can't remember how many months will be.
It sounded like at least 1, possibly 2, 3 months, because they were saying they expect microtransit to start in July and the fixed route to start by the end of August. So I think they want the first full month of fixed route to be free. So it'll probably be 2 months free of microtransit.
Cool.
So super cool. Very exciting to have
And
this.
they are in front of council for
It
a
is.
workshop April 1st. So they'll be finalizing the agreement with council, hopefully to move that pilot project forward. So that will where it will come down to is this council action on April 1st for that. And then last night also was DOT presented on, as Karen mentioned, the reduction of the northbound lane based on DOT data collection. One of the things we talked about, a portion of that Marsh Crossing will be a bridge and saying, it's kind of, this is our only chance. If you, what do you guys want to see? There has been a push in all our community surveys, and what we're hearing is bike and ped and kind of in connecting those dots along Route 1 in our regional plans throughout the state. So that was our request when the DOT came back to us and said, well, we have a finite amount of space for that cross section. because of the, the natural resource permitting, we need to really narrow that, and so they came up with this option. I think as anybody first blush, think about reducing lane capacity on Route 1. I would say town staff asked if first we could try it to like test their numbers. Let's see if this actually would function as they intended to be, because there's a lot of other things like driver behavior, things like that an engineer can't calculate or model. And so before we kind of head down a path that we can't come back from, we were suggesting to utilize a temporary short-term timeframe, which is the worst traffic volume we have. You have to get that peak in the summer, because if it works then, it should work the rest of the year. And so, yes, that was the proposal from last night, is do we try it for it's a 2-month period, and then that temporary barrels and stuff goes away and you're back to the 4 lanes, and we can kind of in that time frame before collect data, during and after, and kind of compare those and come up with the criteria, whether that was success or not. Talking about at that point, presenting that back to council and having a bigger public conversation around kind of success or failure of that, just to figure out where we go from there.
So the proposed dates for the closure are June 15th through August 10th.
Yeah, there was a lot of negative reaction first
Yeah.
blush. One question I have.
Which is understandable,
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
when you don't get into the numbers and things like that, it's definitely
I
understandable.
mean, I think it's worth testing.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
This is
This is the time.
it's a trial, and again, we're talking, this is a huge project where a bridge is going in, and it's not like, the 5 years after that project is complete, we don't want to be kicking ourselves saying, oh, if only we hadn't included bike and ped facilities across the marsh. This is like our one chance to make that happen. And so why not see what happens, modeling that condition, piloting that condition. We fully anticipated I think the response that we're hearing so far.
Well, and that's why we requested, let's test it before we go
And then
to
anyway.
us, to an implementation mode.
One question, in the bridge, there are ways to make it 2 and 1 and switch between the two at certain times of day. Is that something that is
It's just-
considered in the building of the bridge? Does it give flexibility that if you needed to change how many lanes are going now north versus south at any time of day, you could do that?
That, all of that, data, is from DOT, and based on their, analysis shows that, they really they need 2 lanes southbound. That is not
That's-
something that they could ever reduce, right?
Okay, so it has to always be to southbound.
Yeah.
Regardless.
Right, that's my understanding. However, the northbound does have the lower volumes, so that's the potential there.
Okay.
So we'll see how accurate their data is when we.
And like I said, there are things that they can't predict, and that's why I think monitoring it and collecting data during, or like I said, before, during, and after will help kind of guide, like, okay, that's something we didn't predict, they didn't predict. It's a good thing we tested it to see what happened. Cause you never know what driver behavior comes up with.
Sorry, and is the narrowing basically to simulate if we lost some of that space for the.
Right, so
west
it'll
side?
be basically those the big orange construction barrels
Yeah.
would be as you're coming out of Dunstan and heading down that hill before Ann John's.
Yeah.
Would have a taper, so you would do a merge, and then it would be 1 lane all the way across until before Tractor Supply, it opens back up so you have a taper back out to a light. So it's a section too that has no driveways was the other thing, or that was why they're seeing that it has a higher capacity, because you don't have the movements in it.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about cars like
Right,
trying to turn
right,
out
right.
and things like that, so.
We'll see. But I can't really speak a whole lot to the data and stuff like that. That's why, I mean, I've seen it. I think many of us have seen it. But it's in practice it is actually more beneficial to see. I think.
So that is why our next meeting date is TBD, because the town council workshop is scheduled for the date of our April meeting. So we can maybe touch on that now. My thought was give us a little bit extra time, an extra month to work through some of the LID discussion that we've had tonight, and just plan to reconvene in May.
And you can always email us your ideas on limit tree cutting. Tree protection stuff, that would be good.
And pardon me, because we went through the updates quickly, I didn't chime in after the town council update on a question that I had for Counselor Shu. And I'll look at the owl. So I know the IFW letter talks about a group of very committed volunteers, and I know there are other very committed people. So I'm curious with this ordinance, and other ordinances maybe, do you work with any committees on these ordinances, or just does the ordinance committee just take up something that groups of residents want to take up?
I think this is a very particular circumstance because we have a contract with the state after so when that plover was eaten in 2013, we entered an agreement with the state. And so what the letter that we received from the state recently was what we're supposed to have been doing all along under that agreement. So to me, I'm like, I mean, they're basically being like, follow the agreement. So to me, there's not a lot of procedural behind that. It's just basically what's happening, which is a discussion with the council of, do we want to do this or not? And so I think that's why I'm asking, if you have an opinion, please show up, because, you know, I don't know. We have a contract that says we're supposed to be doing this. This is what the experts recommend. And so it's pretty much right on our plate because we're maybe in violation of that contract already. So I mean, typically, like I had someone call me this week, if they want an ordinance, I say, you know, start with a committee, get people to, you know, have some conversation around that and things like that. This is like the opposite. This is like coming from the down to us, where normally stuff comes up from citizen groups and things like that. I don't know if I answered your question.
Compliance with that state contract, if you will, since it happened back in whatever it was, 2014, did you say? Did this come up when it was discussed a year ago in front of council? Because this whole issue came up last year as well.
Comes up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if that particular point was made at the time, I don't actually remember it being made at that time, but.
No, it's
Oh my
unfortunate.
God,
What
so-
happened last year was a mess. Actually, what was supposed to come last year was recommendations from Community Services Advisory Board about dogs on leashes on town property, not beaches. So everything but the beaches was what we were talking about last year. And that's what came out of that committee. Like they spent years talking about like trails and how the land trusts, you can't have dogs, they have to be on leash. And there was a lot of inconsistency. I'll say I was complaining because dogs are on the tennis courts. So like there was a lot of issues. Beaches and dogs were never supposed to be part of the conversation last year. Somehow they got to, and it destroyed it. And so I think it's unfortunate because we have one committee that actually generated a lot of great work, and it got killed because of that controversial issue. That issue isn't going to go away. And I think the Plover volunteers are doing a really good job at collecting data, and they have some of our attention, including mine. You know, I don't go to Higgins Beach. I don't mean to single that out, but that is generally the area where there are some issues going on. And so as someone who works in the legal field, I take the contracts that we sign pretty seriously. And so, you know, I'm very curious to see how this workshop plays out next month.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And we'll get reminders of that, because I didn't write the date down.
Yeah, I'll send it as meeting follow-up, or if you want me to send the calendar invite to you, it's scheduled for April 15th, tax day.
Oh, I do remember that.
I'm just curious, was the IFW's letter in response to complaints? How did they realize that they were
Yeah.
unaware of our lack of compliance? How
Yep.
did they our lack of
Yeah,
compliance?
so I know a couple of Plover volunteers specifically reached out to them this past fall. And then two counselors, me and another counselor, were interested in making the changes that they just told us to make. And so I reached out to them in December. So they had multiple phone calls from residents, and then they spoke to me and they said, and they have the data. I think they have the data. They don't like the environment in Scarborough. And so they've been hesitant to kind of come back here. But I think now that residents are kind of saying, hey, like this is changing. I mean, our town has changed so much since 2013. You can't deny it. And so I think it's the combination of the Plover data, the Plover volunteers, and myself. I think between all of that, they felt like we might actually entertain this idea, where before I think they basically were like, they don't want to comply. We're not gonna come forward. And so just kind of the changing tide in Scarborough.
Can I just put in one last plug for the climate action plan? If you haven't taken the quick poll, thank you. Share it with others, trying to get lots of good data from that. There will be a new one that comes out middle of April. So this one will stay live until then. It's about energy use. So if you haven't taken it already, please do. If you haven't shared it with your neighbors, friends, family, social networks, please share it.
Your family, does that mean like something, second household, would that make any sense?
Probably not for this one,
I don't think so.
no,
So,
but like, if you have other family in Scarborough, please share it with them. Help us get the word out. Oh, and next meeting, so are folks good to skip April, because we've got the town council workshop about the Route 1 pilot project and reconvene in May?
Mhm.
Fantastic. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody, for
Thank you.
staying
Thank you.
a bit late to go over all this stuff. It's gonna be a lot of, it's gonna be a lot.
And thank you for your work on the LID.
Yeah.
Yeah, motion to